we do, I would say, close to $300,000 a year revenue. We're going to try to take it closer to $1 million in the next year or two. And the profit is between me and Leon, and I own 2/3, is about $15,000 profit every month.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Today, I am talking with actually a friend of mine that I've known for a while. His name is Josh, and he does run a very successful ad agency, or pretty much digital marketing agency. But enough of me talking about it. Josh, I'll send it over to you. Can you just maybe introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what you do, let's say?
Definitely. I am Joshua Ruskin. I own Ruskin Consulting, CEO. And we primarily focus on Google ads, or Bing ads, search-based ads, but we also do social media, SEO, sometimes web design and development, but our focus really is on search.
All right, perfect. And let's just dive into your history a little bit real quick, just to get a little bit of a quick timeline going. So I know you've been doing this for a while. So how did you get started with, or how did you come upon this business? So I know you've changed your model a few times. So like, how did you get started, and how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Definitely. So after college, when we were together, I went to Korea. I taught speech and debate. Went back home, and then I started doing tutoring. I did very well in the SATs, and generally did well in high school. So I primarily focused on that, like high school math, science, sometimes English, but mostly math and science, and SAT prep. I was making between $40 and $60 an hour, but I was only working like 3 to 4 hours Monday through Thursday, no work Friday. So I was kind of just like, making good money for, my peer group. But I was just coasting, not really going anywhere. And, got guilt tripped, especially by my mom, that says like, they kind of like sadly telling like, I thought there's more for you. I didn't, what are you doing with your life? And I felt, that hit me, right? So I talked to my dad. I back in high school, I did 2 years of Java programming. So I like computers enough that my dad had the idea like, hey, I got this guy that fixes my computers. And how about you work with him, get an internship with him. He paid for half, I paid for the other half. And so I started with him. And in my naive brain, I thought he was very bad as a business owner. So I said, I'm gonna do this myself. So I tried running a computer repair business and learned I knew nothing, essentially. And so in 1 year of struggle, I lost money that first year. I eventually made the business very profitable, but the big thing that I learned in the process, I tried hiring agencies and freelancers to run ads for me, Google ads, Bing ads. And eventually I decided I'd do it myself because I can trust myself. So I called Google a million times. I got good, and I got good really quickly at Google ads because it was my own money. When it's my own money, like, my mistakes cost me. And so I was very motivated to not make mistakes and to really get good at it, obviously, right? It's my own money. And I think that kind of really quickly got me good at Google ads, solely because I was self-accountable, and the pain was my pain. It wasn't just like, oh, sorry, like, it's hard to say sorry for yourself when you're taking your business. And so I had that tutoring job. If I didn't have that tutoring job, I would have been out of business. That first year, I overall lost money. But with doing that, made the business profitable. After like 2 years of that business, I decided I was out. Weekends were the best days to run ads for computer repair, and before and after work. So it was just a nightmare to run. And I decided that it just wasn't, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. So I applied for companies to work at doing Google ads. And so there's one called Marin Web Design with a guy named Floyd Mitchell, very intelligent, very crazy person. So worked with him. After a few months, I became head of marketing. And so I ran that department. But then on the side, I was growing my client list on the side. I was going on Craigslist mainly, posting essentially a really cocky cover letter. I wouldn't say I did a resume. I just did a cocky cover letter, like 2 paragraphs saying like, I'm really good at this. And then I got a few clients, grew my client list. I got another job at Continental Western Corporation where I had to go in one day a week on Fridays, sadly, but one day a week go in there. They were like, I think they're like worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a big company. So did that. Eventually, me and the head of marketing of that place got into a fight, um, and so I got let go. But at that time, it didn't matter. I think we actually were hanging out when I said like I wanted to leave anyway. I wanted to go to the Philippines because at that same time again, I was building my client list while I was working, and so that's how I was growing the agency. And so essentially, what happened was I met a guy named Shane while working with a client that had a restoration company, a home restoration company, and Shane's like, "Hey, what are you doing being a freelancer? Da da da. Go to the Philippines, build a business." So go to the Philippines. I try working with Shane, it doesn't work out. But then I, went around, Googled for like other agencies that I thought I could maybe help out, web agencies. So then I found one near me, literally walked to them, walked in, and then like tried to make a deal. Didn't work out at first, but then I met I knew this guy's brother was in a place called Angeles, more kind of crazy. That's where the second office was, like kind of like the Las Vegas of the Philippines. Went down to Angeles, went out drinking with his brother a few times until I could finally convince them because I need their resources. They had between, let's say, 60 and 90 people. I was with them for like 2 years, a little bit less than 2 years. So they had the resources of they had like a legal company in the Philippines. They're half Filipino, half American. They had good recruiting. They had all these systems in place, and I didn't have any besides just like a report template and just my knowledge. But they didn't know how to do good Google Ads. So we made a deal that built me my infrastructure. Once I got there, I built the systems out to be able to actually hire people, get the training that I'd done. So by the time we had left and we had parted ways, me and him, because he was more focused on web, I was more focused on marketing. I got the systems and he got the know-how for the marketing. So he did his own marketing and I had the systems to hire and recruit essentially most at that time, mostly Filipinos. So now I'm building an agency, got the Filipinos, it's doing really well. There's obviously a few ups and downs as running a business goes. I'd say one of my other real big breaks was through a guy named Pablo. He got bought out by a company called Digiboost, and I was working with him. He had a plug group, and so he got bought out. Digiboost is run by a guy named Kalen. He was the head of sales at Rackspace. So Rackspace sold for a few $1 billion. Kalen was already a self-made millionaire, already done a lot of work in servers, and then it was buying out companies because essentially the big guy in San Antonio, Texas, was working left his agency to work with Trump. Love or hate him, he left, and so there was an open market that Caleb thought he could take advantage of. So he started buying agencies and built an agency in San Antonio. This guy, I'm not sure he's a billionaire or not, but he's not a billionaire. He's very close to a billionaire. And so he gave me a lot of work. And this time I started changing strategies of who I wanted clients to be. Um, I was getting close to, I think it was like $90 an hour, trying to push like $120 an hour for general customers to work with. But the problem is like essentially getting your own customers is just painful. There's a lot of hand holding. What I found worked a lot better would be to cut my costs essentially in half, but work with agencies. So I started hitting up agencies, and granted, again, I got paid half the amount, but they would deal with a lot of client management for me, and they did the sales. They would get clients, even if they lost a client that I stopped working with, they constantly got new clients. They constantly doing web development with them. And so I didn't have to, I essentially just became white labeled. And so, it was a hard thing to think about. Do I want to go essentially be my own agency or focus on the white label side? But I decided it was just easier to grow and scale under the white label model. And so that's where the other big pivot I did with my company. It became more of a white label agency. I still got a few here and there clients, but it's essentially three big agencies passing me all their work. And I've got a few other small agencies, but it really comes down to three agencies. They do between like $20,000 to $25,000 revenue a month. But I've got very low overhead. I've got, I started making my own, I do programming like I told you. So I had my own scripts. I did all the work for me. So I could be very lean and mean It's actually why I had more profit than the Murphys that I was working with in the Philippines, although they had 60 or 90 people. I actually was more profitable with like 5 people. And so I just liked it lean and mean, less headache, less stress. Then I sold a third of my business to a guy named Leon. He mostly runs it now. And so it's more I got to really just focus on strategy, client relations, and I really got to choose what I want to do. And I let him run it, and he bought me out for a third. And it's a good agency. We do, I would say, close to $300,000 a year revenue. We're gonna try to take it closer to 1 million in the next year or two. And the profit is between me and Leon, and I own 2/3, is about $15,000 profit every month.
Nice. I know you
It's
mentioned,
groundbreaking.
yeah, I know you mentioned pivoting and big breaks and stuff like that, but hey, you took a lot of those chances and took a lot of risks yourself. So you have to put yourself in situations to, I don't want to say get lucky, but yeah, you have to put yourself out there. You have to give luck a chance, or you have to give the world a chance to give you those big breaks for sure.
Definitely. And I was been saying to last night to Mustafa, just like one of I get this like traits is I just generally help people, even if I think it's a worthless sale. Like I remember early on when I was still a nobody, I drove like maybe 2 or 3 hours to meet this old guy. I think his name was Larry, and to help him with his nonprofit. Because early on, I was also focusing on nonprofits because they get 10. For you guys that want to start, here's a really good pitch idea. Nonprofits get $10,000 to $20,000 a month of free revenue on Google Ads, and almost no nonprofit knows about it. And so my strategy back there was this cold call nonprofits and say, hey, like there's this grant, let me help you out with it. And so somehow through this nonprofit outreach, I hit up a guy named Larry who had this nonprofit of I think it was collecting books and sending books to Africa. And I just realized this guy had no funding. His nonprofit wasn't really where it needed to be to really use my services. But nonetheless, I paid for his lunch, went to his house, did all this work for him just for free, just to help him out, was kind. And then I went home and I would have, you could have given me $1 million that was going to go nowhere. And I would have been like, yeah, this is worthless. It's going to go nowhere. I wasted my whole afternoon, but whatever. Good karma points, right? 8 or 9 months later, I don't work with him. He gives me his dental lead, like Harry Albers, who I've now had for like maybe 7 years, 8 years. I've had it for a long time. So I probably made like $40,000 off that client, like a lot of, maybe even more. Like I charge $50 a month. So you do the math. That would be, let's say, yeah, sorry, that'd be close to $100,000. I've made in the lifetime of that client. And that was a lead that I thought would go nowhere. But the idea is, like you just said, you just have to make your own luck in a way. You go out there, and sometimes you feel like it's completely worthless, but you just keep doing it. Like I could have been the one that gone there and saw that old guy and said, saw his nonprofit, said this isn't worth it. Buy peace. And a lot of people would say, yeah, like don't waste your time. But I feel like if you just like, I'm down to meet anybody at least one time to help them out with a meeting. I'll spend an hour or two just to be a good person, is to help them. I won't do like 10 meetings with them, but if you do that enough times, you'll grow a business. Like my business grew from referrals. And like right now we do outreach to agencies, but initially it was very much referral based and like cold call based. And referrals really being a way better one because referrals, the close rate of referrals is like 80%. So just always, put in the work, give someone 1 hour of your time, even if you think this goes nowhere. And if you do that enough times, you will go somewhere. If you go out there and actually help people, it will eventually come back to you.
No, I think that's a really good idea. I know you may not have meant it that exact way, but when you said you wasted that afternoon with him, yeah, definitely not a waste. Like you said, do that enough times, and that will start the engine that'll get the ball rolling with referrals and connections and just experience for you,
Yeah.
Above anything else. And I know you already touched on it. Could you just repeat what you mentioned about how much revenue and profit you guys are doing now?
Yeah, we do between 20 and $25,000 revenue a month. The profit on that is usually a little shy of 15,000, but closer to 15 than 14 on average.
So more than 50%?
Way more. Our profit margin is great because the one thing that I have especially is I got scripts. So it's a lot of it's automated off of just math that I know.
Nice, nice. There you go. So I know you mentioned that you are a digital marketing agency, and I know you mentioned PPC and web and websites and other stuff like that. But if you had to narrow it down to one or two sentences, how would you fill in this sentence? I help blanks to blank.
I help web agencies optimize their clients' Google Ads accounts.
Perfect. Nice. Good thing that you can summarize it into one sentence.
You help me with that, man. You're a big help with that. Usually I'm like more scattered all over the place, but you help me. Yeah, you help me with. I don't know if you guys know as well. Alan's helped me with my branding, and that's one thing he's very good at because I'm more scattered. I'm more of the idea guy, but Alan's more. I'm a high P type. He's a high J type in Myers-Briggs, and so he's very good at being concise. But yeah, without your help, I don't know if I would have been able to do that in one sentence like I just did.
Yeah, definitely. As a little side note, I did help Josh and his business with their strategy and marketing. And well, I'll talk about that more another time. All right. So what are your what are your main traffic channels? So I know you said you worked with one-on-one clients before, and now you work with agencies. So the question is, how do you actually find them? What is your traffic generation method? Like, how do your prospects or clients or customers, how do they first hear about you?
Yeah, so we do more outreach now for agencies, and we're very peculiar on what agencies we work for. We want to work with good agencies that clients like, so it's an easy transition. We tell agencies a lot of times no. What agencies will hit me up oftentimes too. So they're very easy to find. They market themselves. So you can find them on Facebook, you can find them on Google, you can find them on Google Maps. Like it's not hard to find agencies. The hard part is reaching out to them and getting a back and forth dialogue going with them. Once you get a back and forth dialogue, agencies have, I would say, a few problems. Like, so my bread and butter is web agencies. So they've really mastered building websites, design, but oftentimes they don't have they may have mastered SEO, but PPC is one of those things where I truly believe 90% of the people in the market doing Google Ads PPC are dog shit, to be quite frank. So that makes it easier for me to come in and say, like, and I've never had an account that I've taken that I've not made significantly better. So I always look for accounts that already have run. I don't like running new accounts because there's no baseline. Like I'm very confident I can take, if you got good data, to make your data better. That's why I even said in that one sentence to optimize Google Ads accounts. I don't think I'm the best at creating them. I don't think I'm the best at writing. I don't know every kind of business model in America, but I do know how to look at numbers and make numbers better. So with that, I head up agencies and I just try to figure out what their need is. Do you have an internal marketing team? If you don't have one, like, what are you doing? Are you outsourcing it? Are you just saying no? Are you giving the lead somewhere? So I'll oftentimes say, hey, give me the lead. I'll pay you 20% of that client for life. And so it's better than zero. Anything's better than zero. So that's a huge one I found worked, was to say, give me your clients and I'll give you a percentage for life for the lifetime of that client. A lot of agencies love that. A lot of times agencies will, always start with that, like, hey, because a lot of times these agencies have especially because they're more American based, high salary, especially like, New York, San Francisco, or, California. It's very expensive. So they might not take a client that's not willing to pay at least $5,000 a month. They might just say no to anything below 5,000. I'll jump on that. Like my average client's worth, I believe, $950 per month. So I'll jump on anything below 5,000. I'll take it. And so for them, it's again zero. Now they're making 1,000 a month off of, let's say, 5,000. So 0 versus 1,000, 1,000 is more a month. And so I found that worked very well. And then, once they see that, oftentimes they'll be like, hey, what if we just like roll you out? Like, what would it take to roll out giving you all these accounts, you manage them for us because they'll see our reports that are done. So, you just grow that relationship. You just stick with them, you grow it. But you don't need very many. Like I'm trying to grow my agency to be a lot bigger, but especially during COVID and things were kind of like, kind of low. So I've really kind of had 3 agencies that feed me everything. And 3 is not a hard number to get. And my hardest problem is honestly finding good employees. So my biggest problem with scaling is not actually essentially finding these leads. That's the easy part. The hard part is getting good employees, training them, and then getting that dialogue going with agencies and really building that trust, really building that connection, and then build it to where it becomes like where you're getting paid from that agency, like between $5,000 and $10,000 a month.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation the other day that probably the most valuable skill on earth is hiring and team building. That with that skill alone, I think you could probably have a billion-dollar company or be a president or whatever it might be. Could you talk a little bit more about, I know you mentioned you do some outbound outreach as well. What goes into that? I think I've heard you mention cold emailing before. So can you tell us a little bit more about your prospecting, like how you find who to contact and how you contact them?
Yeah, you're gonna think it's very simple, and it's right now. I focus on agencies now, so it's not the same as before where I did Craigslist, Facebook, Upwork. There's many other things you can do, but it's gonna focus on web agencies. Literally, I go on Google Maps and I Google web agencies, and I literally go up and down everywhere. I'm not me personally, but I'll have somebody go through Google Maps and really write down the URL and the email. And it's not that sophisticated. We just send an email out essentially saying, hey, we're a marketing company. We work with big agencies like you and really help them optimize their clients. We work in a variety of models. One model we find that works really well is to essentially any client below your threshold, again, if it's 5,000, whatever, if you could pass us those referrals over to us, we'll pay you 20% for life. Generally, that's the pitch. We also say, like, we obviously work with agencies as well, but we find that that's the best way to get our foot in the door and to say, hey, client that you wouldn't service, let us service it. Let them tell you how good we are, and let's go from there and see what else we can do together.
Yeah, you could make no profit. Yeah, you can make no profit or some profit. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it sounds like Google Maps plus cold email. I know you said that might sound simple, but I think that might be like one of the best traffic channels, I think, or prospecting methods that might sound simple, but nobody does it, which is just literally go to Google Maps, find or look for the type of prospect you're looking for, and just flat out message them or email them with your pitch.
It's so simple, and we're growing it out. Like right now, I don't think I've told you this, but we've got a division. I think it's between 1,000 and 3,000 a month. It's small but growing. Translation. We only started a few months ago when one of the agencies said, "Hey, we got this. I know Josh, you're in Columbia." It was a big chemical company with lots of articles and blogs, and they wanted to have Spanish translation. They were concerned about like the sciencey of it, the science, because they're a chemical company. But I just found someone, not with a chemical background, but just someone that's very smart, that is very easy to Google things. And she just started translating, and they started loving it. And they're like, you know what? We should do this more than just once. Like, why am I doing this? I want to keep her. I want to do this more than once. So I just started just outreaching to translation companies. And now we're building up that department. And so it's a simple way, but it's a fact, like you said, it's very effective. It is a numbers game, but how quick does it take you to look on Google, find someone and copy and paste the URL and email? Takes like, 20 seconds. So you can quickly populate a leads list. And if you get 1% to respond to you, if you're paying someone in the Philippines like $6 an hour, let's just say you get 20 per minute, that would be 180. That would be essentially 2 responses for $6.
Nice. And if a client wants it and if you can easily outsource it or do it, then why not throw it on there for sure?
Yeah, but what I'd recommend for people that I feel like that pitch that I'm using works, I guess especially for agencies, works better once you're established. What I found that I loved, and I don't do this now because I just don't want that. Again, my model changed to be much more white label. I'm not really, I don't have, the situation set up to do what, small clients want anymore, like B2C. But what I really did find worked very well was just literally going on Craigslist and other job sites and posting a cocky cover letter. And that one, because that one you're spending no time. You write one thing, you post every 2 or 3 days. It takes you less than 1 minute. And I'd say when I first started doing it, I got a sale out of one in every three. Now when I stopped doing it, I was like one in every five. But think about, like, that's 5 minutes for a sale. I mean,
Yeah, I
again, there's
know.
wasted calls in there and stuff, but that's the way I thought was the most efficient, because you're doing this lead system. If you do it yourself, it's not worth it. It really only works if you can pay $6 an hour, like 15, even 15 or whatever. But what works really well, because even Craigslist, a lot of people go through Craigslist, look for every job for Google Ads or whatever, web development, programming, and apply, and they try to really read and really respond, and like Upwork, same thing. I'm too lazy for that. I don't want, I just want to, like, here's what I got. You respond to me. So that's what's just when you're first starting out. But if you're a little more advanced, where you can get like a virtual assistant or somebody to run leads and like gather lead data, I like the Google Maps idea the best, because you can actually, you choose, versus when you put a cover letter, you don't choose nothing. Whoever messages you.
Yeah, I think Bill Gates says, I like to hire lazy people because they'll find the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah, and that's me there.
No, I agree. I am definitely a huge efficiency and leverage fan for sure. And speaking of which, let's rewind a little bit. What are maybe two or three of the biggest obstacles that you've ran into to get where you are today? So what are three of the biggest memories you have of, like, oh man, that sucked, or man, that was really in my way, or it took me forever to get over that hump? What are some of those that come to mind?
I've got three. Two of them are repeats of each other, just different names, different story, but same story, different names. But I can go through the first two were manager ones. They essentially, it's really, really hard to put managers in place. And when you grow, you're going to need managers for production, managers for client relations, manager for project manager. You need like all these managers to manage teams, because you're not going to do all of it. And so that gets very difficult. I think getting a good manager is maybe the hardest thing. My opinion, takes a long time, and even you can't just like hire a manager. You have to like almost train them up from like a technical person and turn a technical person into a manager often. And so it's just a lengthy process for someone to really know your systems and really know the scope of your work and to manage the employees underneath them. So two times, like I've had one manager that just really blew it up. I really thought I figured it all out. I was traveling Southeast Asia, finally as a digital nomad, free, not stuck to the Philippines, and then like balls, juggling all the clients, balls kept falling, and fired him. Went back to the States and bought a property. Worked on the farm, did a lot of things to keep, because I was below 3,000 a month. So that was one. Same story, different name, manager problem. And then what solved it ultimately was getting someone that I had worked with for years, that was American, that had a very strong work ethic. Because the other problem I think you have is when you hire, outsource to other countries, even if they're very cheap, their work ethic and the customer relationships and this how they think mentally about business is not the same as Americans. So the way that ultimately I did it, I sold a third of my business. I sold a third of my business to now I would say the head manager of everything. And now we're putting managers under him, and that's, it's still a work in progress. But with him, I've been very hands off now, very stable at almost 25K a month. So that ultimately was a solution, is just, give someone percentage, so that they have to do it. And it's a 3-year, I can cancel at any time, and I'd have to pay him back what he's paid for the business. But it's, we've got a whole contract, but it's the 3 years. He's going to have to really prove to me that he's the right guy. And he is. So that was my solution to that problem. The other one, there's no solution for COVID. COVID really, COVID hit me. But on the flip side, government gave me like, I don't know, like $60,000 or $70,000 of free cash. So even though on paper it looks painful, I got a lot of money. And I was, I also live abroad. I do the foreign earned income exclusion, so I'm not really paying much taxes. I'm doing some kind of legal tax evasion. And so, although COVID,
don't incriminate yourself. Don't incriminate yourself.
No, I'm not. Everything I'm doing is legal. It's in the paper. If they want to change the laws, they can change the laws. But I'm following the laws. So there's zero criminality. I'm just saying it is a legal form of tax evasion I'm engaging in. And so during COVID, my business got wrecked. I think 1 month I made less than $2,000 profit for myself 1 month, but I also was given $70,000. Those are the 3 ones that really hit me, I would say, the hardest, at least on paper.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting what you said about, like, you can't hire a manager off the street. You have to like train them and mold them yourself. I heard some analogy. I don't remember what kind of tree it was, but they said you can't buy a fully grown something tree. I don't remember what kind. Let's just say apple tree. That wasn't it. But like you can't buy a full grown apple tree. You have to buy a baby and you have to grow it yourself. So it sounds like the same idea.
Yeah, I think that there's another book. I think you loved it too, The E-Myth.
Mm-hmm.
The E-Myths, like, I follow that book to a T. Sometimes I think I'm smarter or better, and I'm not. And the E-Myths had the exact same problem that, right there, baby. Yes, exactly. I got mine down here. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure. Oh, there you go.
I love that book. So the big one they said, and I think they said it was their own problem, and it's been my own problem, is that manager component. Essentially, they talked about the technician, the manager, and the owner. And oftentimes, the technician, even in this book, they talk about essentially this lady that owns a bakery, and she's like the best cook in the world, but she can't really run a business. She doesn't know accounting, sales, marketing. And so what oftentimes happens, and it happened to me, is like you take someone that's a technician and then you try to become an owner, and there's hiccups. But the bigger problem is, like, now that you're the owner, getting technicians might be easy, but then getting the managers, I think that's the hardest part of most businesses. Like, unless you just want to stay single and stay a freelancer or whatever, you can make lots of money doing that. Like, especially if you're a programmer, you can make a ton of money just being a freelancer. But if you really want to grow a business that's sellable, where you actually can sell a portion of it, most millionaires in America, their net worth is, they're millionaires because of their businesses. They're not millionaires because they got money in the stock market. They own a business that's worth $1 million. So if you're down that route, and I'm very financially focused, like half my net worth is my business.
And nice. And yeah.
You don't have that if you're a freelancer. You might make more money even. It's very possible, especially if you make more money. But I've got a business that actually, I got flown to Texas because Kate was looking to buy my business out. So like my business is actually worth, like, it's not worth $1 million yet, but it's worth hundreds of thousands. And it's real.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite books and ideas also. In fact, I included that as part of my pitch now, is I say, you might be a great blah, but that's a big difference from selling your blah. Like, you may be a great baker, but that's a totally different situation than selling what you bake.
100%. Like, my employees, I have to run this all the time. They do really good work, but the sad thing is they don't always communicate they do good work. And so I had an old client. I learned this lesson very early on. I had a client. He called me. He was going to fire me, and I look at his Google Ads, then Google AdWords, and I see that this account is doing better now than it's ever done before. Before I had that account, even my whole time having that account, it was at an all-time high. And so I call him. I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, your account's doing amazing. Like this, it's never been better." They said, "Oh, well, I didn't know that." And I thought, "You didn't know that? Like, huh?" And this got a little bit back and forth, and he just said, like, "You need to communicate." And he was right. I wasn't communicating. And so now I have a templated monthly report. I do have people like handwrite some notes and some analysis, but it's a whole format, and it pulls data, pulls graphs, and then it enters in some words. And every month I send that. And the reason being is, again, that communication. It's great that you can great that you can bake cakes. How do you sell and then even resell, right? Like, it's not with this stuff. It's not just like a one-time, hey, I fix your deck and it's done. I'm in the business of like essentially a monthly recurring package. And so I have to not just sell the first time, I have to sell every single month the next month, every time. And so you have to communicate you're doing a good job of communicating, even if you're not doing a good job. That I think there's two things you always want to communicate. One, I'll swear real quick, but like that you give a fuck, that you really give a fuck, and that you care. Because like I think that's honestly more important than doing a good job. Like if you fire someone and they really tried their best, you can't be that angry. You almost hate yourself. You're like, okay, that person didn't have the talent, they have the skill set. I should have known that because they tried their best. It's my fault, not theirs. And so you can't even be mad at someone that's tried their best and didn't perform well. But someone that like, again, giving a fuck and caring, and then actually putting in essentially, the effort, like really showing that like, hey, I'm active, I'm on your account, I'm putting in work. If you communicate those two things, that I'm working and that I try my, that I give a fuck, I'm trying my best, it's very hard to get fired.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's kind of more of a professional mindset that everybody does tend to like and respect. So one last business question. I know you mentioned that you have a marketing agency, which similar to most other agencies, I know you mentioned you do PPC and website design, and you're throwing on a translation now as well. My question to you is, what are your thoughts on niching? Now, on one hand, although I'm a fan of niching, I think there are plenty of situations where niching is not necessary. Like there's no hard and fast rule, like you have to niche or nobody should niche. Like, I don't think either one of those is correct. So my question to you is, what do you feel about, like, because you're going to keep running into clients who want more things like, what about translation services? What about like somebody to clean my house? What about like somebody to book my flights? Like a personal assistant? Yeah, no, but like if you know people in the area, like how thin are you willing to spread yourself? Let me just put it that way.
Very thin. I mean, to be frank, like I think it's more complicated with marketing because like this is the problem that I run into is even I do the best job marketing, right? The best ads ever, lowest cost per click, all this good stuff, right? They go to the website. The website sucks. They then go to the phone. So because the phone, they suck on the phone. I could lose, and like in theory, I should lose the account. Like if they're not seeing profit, they should fire me, even if it's not my fault. Like it's a business. So unfortunately, what that means is that I have to somewhat be responsible for their whole like sales funnel. Even though I'm only a part of their sales funnels, like the tippy top of their sales funnel, I'm like, even if I'm not responsible for the bottom part of the sales funnel, if it doesn't work, I get fired. And so I end up, that's kind of what got me to be more thin. That's why I do design. I don't like development. I rarely do development. We're starting to get more into it though, because we're just growing. We're really good at our jobs, but I had to get into design. I felt like I had to, because my results were related to how good the design was. And even like, here's a good example of something that comes up that really is not our fault, but we would have got fired for. We had a school out in Maryland area. some Christian Catholic school. And again, I'm under the web agency that is managing that client, but they're like, we're getting no phone calls. We're getting no phone calls. We're getting no phone calls. And I'm like talking to, the head guy, Michael, like, why, how is this humanly possible? Like, I see click to call, what's going on? He walked to their office and found their phone was unplugged. Wow. So I could have gotten fired for them not having the phone plugged in. That's what it came down to. And so you have a million situations. So how much responsibility do you want to take on? I mean, you can go thin or, not thick. I think that in theory, I am staying thick because I'm staying towards marketing and sales. But the reality is, like, how responsible do you want to be? And I'm the kind of guy that will take a lot of responsibility. I will make sure that you make sales. I'll make sure you get, that's why I think I do so well, is I'll make sure this works. I will talk to your developer. I'll talk to the person in the office. I'll ask the phone's plugged in. Whatever has to happen to make this work. I'll scratch my brain and like really figure this out. I was just on a call right now, before our podcast, and we talked for like an hour and a half, literally about web design. That's like, there's some other things on Google Ads side and marketing side, but it was really just like, hey, I hate your banner. You don't have clear call to actions. I'm like, listen, we're getting you good leads, but your conversion rate's like, less than 2%, close to 1%. Like, that's not very good. Like, you should have like much closer to 10%. And I could get you 1,000 clicks a day. Maybe I could, but then like, what happens if no one buys? And so, because they're like, yeah, we need more people, but they don't know what they're talking about. They don't really know that their big problem they have is a conversion problem. So I have to go in there and like now take responsibility that in theory is not what I do. I'm not a web design agency, but I'm now having to do that. But then you know what? I give the web agency more web development work. Now they're happy, and now I'm getting, what I mean, like, and I'm making everyone happy. I always try to look for win-wins, and like people usually cower and don't want responsibility, and by just me being responsible for things that aren't even under my umbrella, people love me, and that's why I got clients that stay with me for years, in my opinion.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. That's the good and the bad about offering digital marketing services, is that like there are so many steps. Like you could literally have a whole day seminar on just copywriting, on just headline copywriting, on just lead magnets, on just one type of search campaign, on follow-up, on the billion different steps. And then there's web design, and then there's ads, and then
SEO, on page, off page, blogs, like articles, forums, like, it's a million freaking things.
Yeah. All right. So let's get a little bit more lighthearted here to semi-finish up here. So who are some famous marketing influencers or marketers that you're a huge fan of? Let's start positive. Who are maybe like 2 or 3 famous marketers, famous or not, I guess, YouTubers, marketers, gurus, whatever you want to call them. Who are some that you really like?
Long shot, Gary Vee. Like, he's by large, I love this guy. I think that me and him have extremely similar personalities. Both swear a lot, both intense, both very take responsibility, all this other stuff. I think he's more feeling, I'm more technical. So there's a few differences, but essentially, like, I love his philosophy. I think if you really listen to him and really go out there and show value without asking for stuff in return, you'll do very well. So especially if he runs a marketing agency too. So I highly recommend you follow Gary Vee.
Nice. Interesting. I wasn't sure which direction you would go there. And let's go the opposite direction now. What are maybe 2 marketers or influencers that you don't like? Or if you don't want to pick whole people, you could just say, like, what are 2 commonly said ideas in marketing? Or who are 2 famous gurus that you disagree with?
I may or may not say names, but essentially I think most of them are bullshit. I think most of these guys that run these huge seminars and all that fun stuff are essentially like like almost like fake wrestling. Like it's like, are these guys strong? Or do these guys have sales skills? Sure. But you put the like you took a normal WWE, and I like WWE, right? So I'm not at all shade of WWE. But if you took these guys and put them in a UFC fight, they get their asses kicked, right? Now, could they? Are they better than the average Joe? 100%. Like they're in shape. They're acrobatic. Like they kick my ass. They kick almost anyone in the street's ass. But like you take them professionally, and I think you have to kind of just know like what's a show, like who's putting on a show, and who's actually like legit person like in the field. And so I'll give an example. He's not the worst. I just think, and I think some things he says are good, some things he says are bad. But he'd be a guy that I think is more of a show guy, like a Grant Cardone. Like I was more. I think some things he says are absolutely right, but like you can find that in any book. He's just like paraphrasing books. I see him on that interview with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street guy, and I just thought it was embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. And then afterwards, he's like, "Oh, this random guy. This random guy, like, is legitly a top tier salesperson, and he doesn't do a crazy show. He doesn't have crazy conferences. He maybe has some, but it's not meant for a show. He's meant to like take your team, drag them through hell, and make them freaking badass salesmen. Grant Cardone's all about feel good, everything's happy. You're gonna be rich. You're gonna be rich. You're gonna be a millionaire. You're gonna be a millionaire. It feels like an Oprah show. And again, I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm just saying I wouldn't follow a guy like that because it's just all it's a show. It's a sales script. It's not the real nitty gritty.
No, I agree. It's funny you mentioned him because I just made a video, kind of a book summary about Sell or Be Sold. And I totally agree with you that not only did he get his butt kicked in that interview against the Wolf, but some of what, I agree with a lot of what Grant says, even though a lot of other things he says drive me crazy. But yeah, I guess that's I guess you could say that about anybody. All right, so I know that you mentioned that the E-Myth is one of your favorite books. So what are some of your favorite books or movies or even travel destinations? I know that's a kind of a bunch of different topics. Any favorite business books or travel destinations?
Definitely, I'll go with books first. This is going to sound cliche, and it's outdated book for sure, but it changed my life. So I have to give it credit. It said more about the other book. You probably already guessed it. 4 Hour Work Week. I read that book. I read that book maybe 9 times. I remember working at the farms, like trimming when I was poor, like on audiobook instead of stuff at repeat. Um, and I threw my comment or whatever saying, "Oh my God, that book's like 20 years old." Yada yada yada. All of it's true. It changed my life. So regardless of what anyone says, I wouldn't be here without that book. So I have to give it credit. I don't need to go into it. I'm sure there's a lot of literature about it. But other one I don't think gets enough credit is this book, that E-Myth book. I think this is the best overview of what happens in business that I've ever read.
Yeah, exactly. So I know another connection me and you particularly have is traveling. So I know this is somewhat of a side topic. So let's zoom in here. Can you pick maybe 2 or 3 favorite travel locations as well? Let's go cities.
Okay, I mean, it all depends what you're trying to do. I'll throw in real quick for if you want to start a company, grow a company. This one's not high list of loving to live there, but I think Philippines, because they're the number one BPO like country in the world. They overtook India and they're a much smaller population. So you have to ask why. They've been Americanized. They've been American colon. America took them from the Spanish, the Japanese then took them, and then the Americans took them back. So they're highly Americanized. They all speak English, and the peso there is very weak. So I would go there and headhunt. And really, that's what I did for 3 years living in the Philippines. I know you didn't, you had complaints about it. I agree with those complaints, but that's if you want to live there as a vacation. But if you're trying to grow a business, I highly suggest you go to the Philippines. Another one that Kevin O'Leary mentioned, and I think he's right, is Brazil. Brazil's about to have their economy take off. So there's less opportunity to be in America, Canada, Europe, but like Brazil's like 10 years behind. So if you could maybe it's too late to really do what I did with the agency here. It's really hard to get started. Maybe take your idea and go to Brazil, where they're 10 years slower and anything I've seen a lot of people just do knockoffs. It's like some e-commerce thing that worked really well in America, bring to Brazil. So I think Brazil's highly up there on ones that I would go to really start something. And if you're looking at us to live and enjoy, you already have your own business going and maybe trying to take advantage of the foreign earned income exclusion, be outside of America 11 months out of the year, don't pay federal taxes. I really love Colombia. That's where I'm living right now. I love Medellin. It's not my favorite place to be a tourist, but to live, it's just everything's convenient, everything's cheap, the weather's the best in the world. So I love Medellin. Others, like the problem is also time zone. So I'm thinking of things in time zone. I think Playa del Carmen is a little more touristy, but it also is there's very good nomad community there. I think Chiang Mai has a very good, I think its time has kind of passed a little bit, but I think back in the day it had a very good e-commerce community that you could really jump into, and a lot of these guys became millionaires off of that, being in that circle. So there's a lot of these like digital nomad hotspots. There's actually a site called like nomadlist.com. I believe there's a city in Portugal that ranks really high. I think Budapest ranks really high. There's places that are very safe, very cheap, good weather. Travel. There's a lot of places. For me, I really like Latin America. Mostly for the time zone. I think I'd probably be in maybe Thailand or Europe if it wasn't for the time zone. But I really do love Colombia. And I love Brazil. I like Mexico a lot. So, but you have to decide what you like. Like, what kind of social life do you like? What kind of like women do you like? What kind of activities do you like? What kind of weather do you like? And is this for business or pleasure? If it's for business, I do think Philippines is a very good place to go to hire and to staff.
All right, cool. So let's jump into two last quick questions, and then we'll probably wrap up here. So one is, if you had one tip or one piece of advice, let's say for a fresh college grad or even high school grad, to run or to start their own six-figure, high profit, relatively passive agency, what would you advise them to do as some top tips, let's say?
Yeah, there's a lot of things to do. I really know it. And I think luckily in this industry for marketing, it's new enough that there's not a lot of competition. A lot more is coming, but it's so new that people suck at it. So if you just be good at it, you'll be fine. So first thing I'd focus on is just get good. Read books. Call Google's support line 1,000,000 times. And in your brain, it's not enough to just no, you have to have a mental map of how this works. There's part psychology, it's part ad writing, it's a lot of math, not complicated math, but really having your brain a good model of Google Ads. And I think if you've got that, no matter what, you'll get a good job. Once you get a good model in your brain, I think the second part would then be communicating that you've got that skill set. So the next part I would say really focus on is my cocky cover letter in Craigslist, right? Really going out there and being confident that you've got the model in your brain and communicate to people I have this, I'm good at this. One thing I did too is also don't be greedy. One of the things I said a lot, because when I had no experience, but I just had the mental map and the cockiness, I would say, give me your Google Ads account and don't pay me anything unless I knock it out of the ballpark for you. And because even then, there's still a risk that I could go there and destroy everything. But I'm trying to make as best as I can a risk-free way for a win-win situation. And I think a lot of people really look at how can I take? What can I get to take the most money out of people? And especially early on when you have no experience, no ethos, no credibility, you have to really give them a big win. And so oftentimes too, I always try to think I think first how to give my client the win they're looking for. So I think a lot of it I even said when you email these agencies, you can throw out some feelers, but you have to be on the call and really listen, actively listen and try to solve their problem before you solve your problem, which is I want to get paid. That's basically your problem is how do I get paid? Your problem is easy to solve. Ask for some money. Your problem is easy. Their problem involves you listening and figuring it out and caring. So figure out their thing, figure out how to give them the win first, and then ask for your win second. And then after that, after communicating, I'd say the staffing problem. And again, find the win-wins, find ways to make this to make it so that they feel that they really enjoy working with you, that you make their lives easy, that you care, and just always find the win-win. And most people, it sounds obvious, but I promise you, the vast majority of people don't think this way.
Yeah, especially listening that you mentioned there, I think is super underrated. It sounds simple. Everybody thinks they do it. But yeah, listening is super important as well. Recruiting is definitely hard. I know that hiring and churn is one of the most expensive expenses for any business anywhere. So that's definitely a huge problem to solve.
Amazon will pay you $2,500 to quit just so they don't waste their time. So I think recruiting is the one big thing that's just it's like people sending fax still. They're just really old school. Nothing new has shaken and changed it. And so I look at that, and I really do think it's $1 billion industry. Someone can crack that. Someone could essentially you opt in and say, yeah, I'll let you look at my Facebook page. I'll let you take all my data. I'll let you look at my search history.
Yeah, I remember I interviewed with Zappos a long time ago, and I know they pay people to quit too. And it is pretty smart. Cool. So one last question. Actually, it's not even a question. So that pretty much wraps us up here. Of course, thanks for hanging out today, giving us all that good, juicy info, starting a big 6-figure agency.
Love the house.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of which, I know that you mainly work with agencies, but how can people get a hold of you? Or where should people follow you or find you or pitch whatever you want to pitch? That's the point.
Love pitching. My name is Joshua Ruskin. You can find me, if you Google me right now, I'm going to dominate the first page. I'm the Joshua Ruskin in the world. So YouTube, follow me on YouTube. I do some videos sometimes. I really have some marketing videos up there. I have a training course you can get. You can purchase it through my website. I've got a website, ruskinconsulting.com. I've got a Facebook page. I've got Instagram. Again, just Google me, Joshua Ruskin. I dominate that first page. You'll find me. And like I said, I'm willing to, as long as it's not a complete waste of my time, you come prepared. I'll give you an hour of my time for free, and I'll do my best to help you out, even if it's, even if you're my competition. I have no problem.
Nice. Very cool. And of course, I am going to throw some of those links down in the description as well.
Appreciate it, my friend.
Perfect. Well, again, thanks for hanging out, Josh, and for all that good info and good gold nuggets there. I guess before we finish up, just any last comments before we finish up here?
Yeah, I hope this was all helpful. Again, you can reach out to me for any help, and I think as well as Alan, I think he's extremely good at strategy. I think that he's very good at condensing. Again, like that one sentence. When I first did this, I struggled with it. You saw me right now. I did it without struggle. So I would definitely hit him up for branding and strategy. But I think the overall kind of message I would say is just go out there and shotgun approach it. Try multiple things. Really try to figure out what you like, figure out what you're good at, what you're bad at, really self-aware. And don't be greedy, don't be selfish, just really try to help people, and we're all in this together. And if you could help people, I know you won't, you don't necessarily see that ROI right away. Like that one client, I went all the way out there, and I thought I would have put money, lots of money, 100 to 1 odds that was wasting my time. I was wrong. 8-9 months later, I got a client that's now paid me close to $100,000, $750 a month for 7 years. So if you just keep doing that, you will make a business. There's no doubt in my mind. You might need a side hustle to keep you going while you're growing it. But if you keep going out there, you keep knocking on doors, you keep you don't let no's discourage you, and you just, you're there and you gladly help for free. Like last big examples, I tried to hire this one guy in SF, and I said hey, look at this account. What would you do? Give me a suggestion. Yeah, pay me for this. I'm like, I want to know your ideas. I have no idea if I think you're good at it. He's like, and he just got mad, screamed at me like, who the hell do you I think you are? That hung up. And my first thought in my brain is like, I would never sell like this guy. Like, why wouldn't he spend 10 minutes giving me free advice? Why wouldn't he? Why is he that selfish? And like, he's just bitter. And like, yeah, life can be hard, so it's gonna be bitter. But like, everyone struggles, everyone has problems. If you want to do an agency, I find it very rewarding. Sorry, I went on a tangent, but it's real quick. Like, read this book, I recommended Sapiens. Um, it talked about really like the transition from like kings and queens putting their profits to like pyramids, banquets, to gladiators, like non-producing assets. This just wastes everyone's time. And so everyone back then really had the belief that things were going to only stay the same or even get worse, because the golden ages were the days of Christ and Muhammad and stuff. So people had the belief that things are going to be the same tomorrow or worse. And it wasn't until like bankers and business owners really made it the idea that like tomorrow is going to be better. And so more than any other group, more than teachers, more than priests, more than anybody else, small business owners have like leapfrogged us to a much better world. And so you get the opportunity, even if these guys are assholes or hard to deal with, you get an opportunity to help people that have done more to help the world than any other person. And so take that with gratitude, take that with like appreciation that you get an opportunity to really make a difference and to help the people that make the most difference. And if you act that way and act with good compassion, I have no doubt in time you'll have a really good business, a six-figure business like agency like me.
Yeah, entrepreneurs often do change the world. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Perfect. So I guess we will leave it at that then. So again, thanks, Josh, for hanging out. All of those all that great info and nuggets, like I mentioned. Of course, the links are below, and you can find him there and at his website. Sign up, follow him, and all that good stuff. All right, Josh, it's been great. Yeah, it's been great talking to you, and I will see you next time.
See you next time, my friend. Take care.
All right, take it easy.